it going, guys? So I want to talk about today, have people evolved to eat meat? Has that been something that is integral to our evolution? Is that something our body is designed and is expecting and needing to take in? Sorry for that. So that's what I want to talk about today. And first I want to state that I am a college student. But I have finished, I know it's not much, but I finished my associate's degree. It's been given to me. And I did that in anthropology, which is the study of humans in general. Anthropology just means the study of humans, and there's many categories: archaeology, and what I'm going to talk about today, mostly physical anthropology, which is how humans evolved to what we are today. And that includes primatology, actually, the study of apes, and I think it actually just includes apes, if my memory serves correctly. I don't think it includes monkeys, which are not great apes. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So when we're looking at are humans meant to eat meat? That is an interesting question. So the best thing to do is to go back in time and to look at what we were eating at the very beginning of our creation when we first evolved into our modern form, and then also what were our most recent ancestors right before Homo sapien, which is human, right before Homo sapien. What were they eating majority of, and what were they evolved to eat? So in my opinion, and with my educational background, this is the viewpoint I'm taking and how I feel it best serves to ask the question: are humans dependent on meat? Okay, so the ultimate answer is no, absolutely not. Okay, and I'm going to explain that very simply. Okay. The first thing I want people to understand is that meat, has always been something, in the wild there's never excess. There's always just enough if you're doing well. Animals don't usually have excessive amounts of food laying around. That leads to population explosions, and then then there's no food, and then there's a starvation, and then everything dies. So a good balanced ecosystem only has just enough. Okay, and so if you're a active creature like a human is, we move a lot, we travel a lot. We're not a sloth. We have high metabolisms. Okay, we require a decent amount of foliage and greenage and fruits and plant-based foods to supply us. Okay, and it is advantageous evolutionarily to be able to eat meat when there isn't plants around to eat, and to use it kind of as a vitamin supplement in a way, as it's not what you eat. It's like, no, that's not what we eat, but would you rather risk starving when there's the season's out on the fruit and there's no foliage, or there was just been bad weather and we can't, and the whole tribe is trying to eat enough? Or would you rather just be able to basically smoke a cigarette health-wise, but get the calories you need for the short term to sustain yourself? And that's what meat has always really been. Meat has always been something, I like to liken it to rocket fuel. Okay, meat's high in protein, it's high in zinc and iron and B vitamins, and it's got B12 and all these things that carnivores, or people who demand that we must eat meat, they always say, oh, but it's got this that plants don't have, and it's just it's so concentrated, it's not, plants aren't comparable. And the truth is that, yeah, it has more protein, it's got a lot of iron in it, that's even maybe more bioavailable. But what happens? The fact is that your body is not meant to run on it. So you can eat it. Okay, you can totally eat it, and you may even experience some benefits so maybe you can keep on some extra weight during the cold season because you're eating some extra saturated fat and protein, okay? But guess what? Just like everything else in life, it catches up with you. There's consequences to everything we do. Guess what? If you smoke a cigarette or a half pack of cigarettes a day for your whole life, you are half as likely to get any neurological disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. Look this up. Nicotine is a neural protective, and it's also a joint protective. But guess what? You're at risk for lung disease, arterial disease, okay? All sorts of cancers. You are at risk for so many more things in comparison to Xing out, oh, maybe I won't get dementia now, or maybe I won't have as many joint problems because I have nicotine in my system. It's pros and cons, okay? And humans were evolved to eat majorly plant-based foods, okay? And if you look this up, Australopithecus robustus, okay, Australopithecus was part of the hominid species, okay? The way it goes most recently is that there's hominids, okay, those are great apes, gorillas, orangutans, okay, including us. We are considered a great ape, but we also are considered, further down the lineage, so we are not hominid, we are homo, okay? But my point is that hominid, Australopithecus, okay, that was one of our most recent ancestors, and Australopithecus robustus, which was one of the most prominent versions of that, and there's also other versions of species of Australopithecus that were purely vegetarian. They did not eat any sources of meat, and they had denser bones. This is why apes have denser, bigger jaw muscles too. It's not because they eat meat. They don't eat meat. It's because it takes so much force to chew grass all day and rip apart plant material and eat it and to get enough calories in that the skull of an ape, if you look at it, a gorilla, has a ridge, a raised ridge with muscle attachments because there's so much force that's generated from them just chewing all day, and they have big old guts full of plant material because they just eat and eat and eat, And now they're much bigger, so that's why they have to eat so much. But Australopithecus robustus, which is not a gorilla, but they had a much similar, again, robust. That's what they literally call them, Australopithecus robustus, because their bones were so robust because they ate a plant-based diet, which forced the facial structure to be much more robust to be able to deal with that. And what happened was, for humans, what you call humans, when in the sense of not being as robust, is called gracile. That is the anthropological term for your bones becoming lighter. It's becoming more gracile. They require less calories to maintain, and they're more efficient for their weight, technically. And that was partially driven because robustus, Australopithecus in general, the species, started becoming immobile. Chimps, gorillas, they stay within ranges of forest areas. They settle. So for them, it's easy. They're always around greenage, and they just sit there. But what happened is that with the competition, for some reason, our ancestors, Australopithecus, and then if you want some examples of more recent, you got Homo habilis, and then you got Homo erectus, then you got the Neanderthal, and then you have Homo sapien, which is us. Okay, but anyway, so Homo habilis, Australopithecus, these proto-humans, for some evolutionary reason, found it more advantageous to start traveling and becoming traveling mobile groups, nomadic. And that's why we became bipedal. That's why the thumbs on our feet of our great ancestors of the hominid, the much later hominid species, and before that, were like chimps and monkeys, where our feet were like our hands, because it was more, we didn't travel very far. We stayed within, maybe 100 square mile radius within a forest, and that was that. Our ancestors found it advantageous to start becoming nomadic. With that, guess what? Diet starts to vary. You don't have a consistent same diet all the time. Now the plants are changing all the time. You're seeing bigger seasonal change because maybe it's a couple generations down and your troop is literally thousands of miles away. That's of where your couple generations ago was. So now the seasons are different because you've changed geographically. So there's all sorts of things changing our environmental pressure so much faster than any other creature ever deals with. No other creature as purposely branches out as fast as pre-humans and modern humans did. And that was simply because we obviously were very intelligent and we had already become mobile and we had figured out that, hey, we can just keep moving around. It's like, it's called resource practitioning partially, where you basically are like, hey, I can just move around other people and not have to fight them rather than fighting all the time for the same resources. I'll just move around them more efficiently. And that's what encourages nomadicism, okay? Now anyways, there's so many things to talk about. So, this was my main point. So with this, the environmental things are changing so much, we can't depend on what we usually depend on because literally generation to generation, things are changing slightly, seasons are changing, we're having all this. So what do? We make a sacrifice. We're like, you know what, if we find these dead carcasses that lions kill most of the time and other predators and just scavenge them, and then maybe we start figuring out proto-traps, creating some proto-tools because we figure out that it's a cheap, high, dense calorie source that will keep us alive. So when you're talking about survival, okay, and keeping the genetic line there, you better believe that our ancestors were willing to deviate from our natural diet in the sense of what we ate for the millions of years leading up to that point to stay alive, okay? And you'll see this with a lot of animals. Even, animals are all about efficiency. Do as little work for as most calories as possible because that's how you survive in the wild at the end of the day. If you're using more calories than you're eating, you're gonna die. It's math. So meat was a cheap, dense calorie substitute that we could scavenge off random kills, and then later on we started hunting more because it became part of the culture, and as we branched out faster and faster, we knew less about the plant material. So in some cases and in some tribes, like the Inuits, who decided to just keep moving all the way up into northern regions, there's no plants. So what did they do? They started eating a purely meat-based diet, and they paid for it. Everyone likes to pretend, they had no disease. No, they had severe osteoporosis, and they had other chronic diseases such as eye problems and other organ problems. And this is no indigenous people were perfect health, guys. Nobody was perfect health, and no natural animal is perfect health. The environment is always taxing you're full of parasites, there's mosquitoes biting you, life taxes you karmatically. So no no species has ever had perfect health that lives to 150. And I'm calling you out, Scourge. If you guys have ever seen that guy on YouTube who claims people eat raw meat, I'll tell you this right now. He literally reads off a teleprompter, lies his butt off about pseudoscience assumptions off of very little knowledge he even has on this subject of human evolution and how we actually came to eating meat and what our diet is even made up of. So that guy is full of it, and so is Milk Jar on YouTube. They're full of it. They don't know what they're talking about. I'll debate them any day. It's ridiculous. And anyways, so I want to mention some other things. There's a guy, if you guys are interested, his name's, I wrote it down, his name's Thomas O'Connor. He's a medical doctor, and what he's actually known for on YouTube, this is going to sound random, steroids. And he doesn't do steroids, he's a doctor, and he basically helps guys who have low testosterone. He's a TRT, testosterone hormone replacement therapy guy, okay? And basically, even he used hormones, steroids back in the 30s. That's what he talks about. But his point, and the reason I'm talking about this is because he's a meat eater. He eats meat. He's a protein guy. He's a gym bro, okay? He's classic American, has clean diet, vegetables, lean meats, fish, high healthy fats, okay? But guess what he's talking about the whole time? And I'm going to link this video that he does an interview with the guy's name. They call him the Anabolic Doc on this channel, but the point is the whole time they're talking about high cholesterol, heart disease. High blood pressure, heart disease. And the reason he's so familiar with this is because when people take steroids, it elevates their cholesterol and it elevates their blood pressure a lot of the time. So a lot of the men, it's partially genetic, just depending on how you respond to any like medication. Some guys just don't respond. They're just genetically gifted. Most men will have increased cholesterol slightly and increased blood pressure from just even a healthy high dose of testosterone or an excessive dose. And the point is that these doctors who deal with these guys who have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and eat lots of meat, lots of protein, they always get heart disease. And if you have not been listening to the bodybuilding like especially you, Scourge, if you haven't been listening to the bodybuilding community, they are getting heart attacks left and right. I mean, it's ridiculous how many bodybuilders in the past couple of years have had heart attacks and died. And that's because of the fast heart disease that happens with the high cholesterol fueled by all the high protein and meat that they eat, with the high blood pressure, and then all that spun off with the high anabolic / testosterone energen levels that they have in their system. It's a recipe for heart disease. And you're naive and diluted to think that, based off your imaginary system of how humans used to live, that this is the way to eat for humans. Humans are meant to eat a 100% plant-based diet, and there's no evidence to fight that. Humans can survive on a meat-based diet, but we will have consequences for that. And not to mention, people say, well, you can't. There's plants are so hard to survive on. No. First off, we evolved in Africa. That's where we evolved. They have some of the most densest rainforests in Africa with the widest diversity of plants. There's 250,000 variety of plant varieties today. And that's after we've exterminated probably a couple 100,000 over our developing, before we start documenting them. But anyways, so you have the widest diversity of plants in Africa. That's where we evolved in the tropical area. We had the ability at that point to depend on plant-based foods, and that's what we evolved on. When we moved out of that zone, we made the sacrifice where we stayed 80% plant wherever we moved to, but we always needed meat because we never had the time to fully learn the environment over the thousands of years of enculturation. Culture is the unprofessional knowledge, non-institutional. It doesn't come from a university, it doesn't come from a government, it comes from your mom, it comes from generations down of learning. Culture. Inculturation is learning that, okay? And as people move to deserts and frozen zones and just different ecosystems in general that we weren't designed to evolve in, it created a dependency for meat. But nowadays, guess what? We have technology. We can farm anywhere. We can farm indoors and use 99% less pesticides, 90% less water, and get 100 times the volume using vertical stacking, using organic techniques. We have the ability to use 100% plant-based diet to fuel our ecosystem, and we are growing more food than we need today so we can feed cows because they're heavier and they need more fuel than plants do, obviously, on the trophic system. It's a pyramid, okay? The trophic system is plants on the bottom, it's power levels. You have plants who are the producers, and then you have predators at the top, and you have herbivores who eat the plants in the middle, okay? as you go up the system, they are consuming more and more energy, right? The cow had to consume way more grain than you'd have to consume in a day just to put on the same percentage of body mass because it's a bigger animal. And you're thinking that's more efficient? I hate when I hear people say, we don't have the room to grow all these veggies for vegans. You're growing more than you need right now, and we're growing more protein than we ever need because most of it's soybeans to feed cows because it's so high in protein. We're growing more protein than we would ever need on this earth at this moment. We need it though for the future generations, but what we need to do is lessen our dependence on animal products. But my point is that we use meat as a dependency because we moved out of natural environments that we depended on in the first place, that we understood the foliage environment, the biodiversity, and what we could pull, and we could depend on 100% plant-based diet. Once we moved out of those zones, it takes millennia to develop all the trial and the error and to find the little ingericides and all the difference in the plants to know what you can and can't eat and what seasons, what you depend on then and where you need to move to find this food. There is so much knowledge and time that takes, and not to mention, people aren't just going to say, oh, you know what? I didn't figure it out this season. I'm just going to die. No, they were people who were surviving, who had no edge. They were purely in it. They didn't have this outer view of themselves as humans that we have today in this sense. They were just surviving as any animal would, but they were just more intelligent and aware of their environment. So they said, hey, why don't I scavenge this meat off a carcass and stay alive? That's the basic principle of why we started eating meat. We never depended on it. I'm going to make this one other last point, and that is people talk about milk. Oh, look, we evolved to be able to eat milk. Look at Nordic people who are able to sustain milk. Let me put this into viewpoint. That is one of the only genetic diet mutations that represents in the last 10,000 years. It's the only one in the last 10,000 years. In the last 10,000 years, it's the only one that is a recorded dietary genetic adaptation to creating the lactase enzyme to digest lactose sugar in the protein of milk. Okay, but guess what? That is a single genetic mutation that has to do with one part of your body, which is the simple breakdown between with your stomach and intestines of the milk and the proteins and the sugar. It has nothing to do with how your arteries, how your nervous system and organs respond to it long term over decades of time when you weren't even supposed to be taking it in. Not to mention the estrogens and the hormones in milk and mammalian milk is many times more bioactive. For obvious reasons, it's literally a genetic cousin and a mammal producing mother milk, and you need estrogen to bind calcium to bone and for healthy tissue growth. It's very natural, but infants need higher amounts of estrogen to grow healthy, to have healthy, soft, beautiful tissue, just like beautiful young women have beautiful soft tissue. They need that to grow healthy. So milk has lots of estrogen, boys. So I hope you're happy and I hope you're excited, because let me tell you, you're getting a lot more bioavailable estrogen in your milk than you will ever get in your soybeans. Not to mention, soybeans protect your prostate, they protect your heart health, they protect women from breast cancer. I don't know how long I should keep going. I think I've made my point. I'll make more videos on this. You can ask questions about some of the things I've covered, but as my point stands, humans did not evolve to eat meat. We used meat to stay alive as a crutch because we moved out of natural zones. We accepted the risks and the heart effects that it has. We didn't know it was going to have that effect on us, but we said, hey, it's better than dying. and we adapted our needs. And that's what you even see other animals do in certain like urban scenarios when, you know, their environments have been destroyed. What do they start doing? They start eating trash. They start eating human food. They eat what they can get, guys. Humans are meant to eat 100% plant-based. You can survive on animal food, but you will not thrive. But it takes knowledge and understanding to thrive on a 100% plant-based diet. So don't be a fool and just eat Coca-Cola and bananas all day. You need lentils, beans, fungus, greens, yams. You need nuts, seeds. You need all sorts of stuff. Seaweed has iodine. You know, have a little bit of seaweed, you know, in your diet once a week, you know, to keep your iodine levels healthy. You know, there's all sorts of just little bits of knowledge here and there. And I want to say one last thing, actually, because I just know if this video gets like views, people are going to say this. Oh, we gotta, you know, what about trading, blah, 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 for, you know, you can't grow all the food you need in one area. So if you're going to eat 100% plant-based in the US, we need to influx more food, or we need to trade more food. Even if we didn't need more, we just need to trade more food for the food we didn't have. And that answer is yes and no. Yes and no, because the future of farming is moving indoors, guys. The outdoor environment, because of climate change and because of just, even if you don't believe in climate change, just because of environmental factors, is becoming too expensive and risky. So they are learning, big companies are learning to grow indoors, main crops, greens, even experimentation with fruit. So do not be naive to the fact that, believe it or not, we're going to be able to artificially, organically grow, you know, even non-GMO, organically indoor grown food in regions you never expected before. And that's what they're already doing all around. They have test pilots in New York during the winter, in Alaska and Antarctica, growing hydroponic organic greens. You know, there's all sorts of information in that. So the trading will be minimized, but trading is healthy because, believe it or not, the very earliest examples of animal usage was, you know, if you go back to the, where Mesopotamia is basically in the, not Middle East, but, you know, yeah, the Middle East basically, Saudi Arabia region. Basically, there wasn't enough crops to grow our year, and there wasn't enough for, you know, and the people who are raising cows in the mountains of this area and the steeps didn't have enough plant food. So basically, one of the earliest examples of agriculture and trading we have is in the Mid-Eastern area, you know, early Saudi Arabia and that peninsula, or, you know, land area connection, is people, two different groups. You know, people would take, you know, their goats, they would, like, bring their goats, you know, in the mountains during the hot summer, and then they'd bring them back down in the harsh winter in the mountains. They'd bring them back down into the valleys. And they'd basically work out a deal, and the people down who lived in the valleys would help take care of the sheep and whatnot. But the people in the mountains would trade for plant materials. So to be afraid of globalization is literally to renege human nature and to reject human strategy. It's ridiculous. I support exploitation, and I don't want, you know, countries taking over each other or anything like that crazy like stuff people talk about with globalization or something. But I totally support healthy trade that can even benefit countries, and I support those countries getting the money they deserve and being willing to pay the price for what that's worth, and not subsidize it on our side to cheat them. But anyways, so that's the last point I'm making. Humans are meant for a plant-based diet. Hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Matt, guys, signing off. Exploration Botanical. It's been another episode. Enjoy yourself. Have a great day. Bye.